Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show. This episode is sponsored by Glisten. Learn a language by listening. Learn more at www.glisten.ist and download Glisten from the App Store now for iPad, iPhone, and Apple Watch.
The way I have it set up, and we'll move on from OmniFocus, but the way I have it set up is I want it to represent what my day looks like. That's one thing that Things does very well. They operate on a time-based system, so it's like, here's today, every today list. So I was like, what if I sort of replicated something like that in OmniFocus? And it's really made me happy.
Welcome back to another episode of iPad Pros. Our guest today is Eric Bowers, who runs a home mortgage company and is writing a book in his spare time. He relies heavily on the iPad Air for his work, and we dive into how he does all of this in this episode. If you want to support this podcast, the best thing you can do is go out and download and try Glisten. Glisten is the Good Listen podcast app for language learners. It's all you need to immerse yourself in a language on the path to becoming fluent. We'll be sharing more about Glisten later on in this episode, but for now, download Glisten for iPad, iPhone, and Apple Watch. As a reminder, you can also support this podcast over at patreon.com/iPadPros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. By supporting the show at either place, you will get early access to both iPad Pros and Vision Pros. The yearly rate on Apple Podcasts is heavily discounted and a great option to get that early access all year long. My thanks to everyone that supports the show. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. With that, here's my discussion with Eric. Enjoy. Welcome to podcast, Eric.
Hey, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
So first, can you introduce kind of your setup and who you are?
Yeah. So I'm Eric Bowers. I live here in Florida now. I'm originally from Central New York, and the weather's much nicer down here, so that's wonderful. It's snowing up there now.
Yes.
But my setup. So who I am? I'm a branch manager for a mortgage company here in Tampa, and so I have a few branch loan officers that I oversee, as well as my own sales production. And I'm also, out of nowhere, a few years ago, I became a writer, and I didn't see it coming. I've been a lifelong musician. I'm a bass player and singer, and I can play guitar, and but so that was like the creative side. But out of nowhere, I just started writing because I didn't fancy myself some big English major or something.
Right. Yeah.
It just happened. So creatively, that's what I do. I've actually sort of put the music into the background, but running a full-time business as a loan officer and branch manager and writing my next novel, like that's enough for me. And then I'm a married man. I married to my wife Alexandra for 7 years and been with her for about 10. We have 3 little dogs, so just a really good setup, and I'm happy, healthy, and I'm really glad that we're chatting today because I love technology.
That's awesome.
The other end of it.
So the book you're working on is not your first book. You've written at least one before.
I have. Weirdly enough, it was called GTD with Things 3. So
yeah,
I wrote a book about Things. I dropped it on the day that they released Things 3.
Are they still on Things 3, or is there a Things 4 at this point?
They're on Things 3.
They're on Things 3. That's what I thought.
But they've iterated quite a bit and built in some nice features. And we'll get to where I am with task management. I'm just going to throw you a curveball again for task management. So based on our prior conversations.
Yes.
But yeah, I wrote that book, and from there I said, whoa, I can actually do this. Like I did it self-published in iBooks Author.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it in Ulysses at the time.
Yeah.
We'll talk about my writing setup now, but I wrote it in Ulysses. And surprisingly, other than the screenshots, I'm not happy with how the screenshots turned out, but look, it was my first go. I was happy with how the book both turned out, was received, and also performed, quite frankly. I'm pretty psyched about my first book being halfway, a success in my eyes. And other people found it helpful. So that's really the thing that drove me. And that's what's driving me on this novel as well. We can sort of get into that, but
yeah,
the novel is, man, I started thinking about it the second I released the Things book. I had dreams. It came to me. I looked at old notes. It went through various iterations in 2018. And so this is like I'm trying not to be precious with this novel, but it feels like if I'm going to get one cool creative thing out that I'm totally proud of, this would be it. And so I'm really taking a lot of care with it,
Yeah.
but that's where I'm at. So it's a long way to answer who am I, and I guess what am I? I didn't even answer what my setup was,
Yeah,
did
yeah.
I?
What's your current iPad you're rocking?
All right, the iPad is an iPad Air 2022
Okay.
M1.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird. I stepped down from an iPad Pro, the 12.9, because at the time I had it, I was living in Philadelphia, and I would take the train into town, to go to work. And sitting there with a 12.9, it's kind of unwieldy to just unravel with the
Mm-hmm.
keyboard next to somebody. And so I thought, man, I would love something a little bit different. And that was, I had that until we moved down here, and then the 2022 comes out, and the iPad Air, and I was like, whoa, this thing has an M1.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can just pick up a smart Magic Keyboard for it. So I
Yeah.
have the Magic Keyboard. I also have the folio, the cover, the
Okay.
smart cover.
Yeah, yeah. When you want to be
So
without a keyboard.
yeah, exactly. If I want to use it like a book or a true notepad, or honestly, I'm halfway decent at typing on glass. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so it's not the end of the world if I sort of forget the keyboard.
Sure.
Where the keyboard really comes in handy, and it is a total game changer, and I mean that in every sense of the word, is when I'm using Amazon Workspace for
Mm-hmm.
work to tie into a virtual PC setting. It's really cool to have a pointer as opposed to using an
Yes.
Apple Pencil.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Imagine it being, yeah, it just transforms it to a laptop at that point.
yeah. I've nicknamed the iPad my buddy because it is with me wherever I go. Um, like if we're going out for the weekend, my job is weird, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
to be available, right? And so I take the iPad, I make sure it's fully charged pretty much all the time, at least overnight, and
Yeah.
I charge it up, and I'll throw it in the trunk, and then say, okay, if someone calls me, I could literally be at my office, quote unquote, with my iPad, and
Yeah.
it's just phenomenal for that.
So mortgage lending, that's the step beyond, like, real estate is the actual selling of the house. After that is done, are you the next person in line after the house is sold to like say, hey, let me get the money to fund this purchase?
Yeah, I'm the money guy. So I always put it like realtors are wonderful because they are the hopes and dreams people and look at the pretty
Yes.
place and the landscape, and I go, that's all well and good. Let's see if we can afford that now. And so I dial in the numbers, and and I've got my style. Everyone kind of works differently. But I'm very much a realist without being overly cautious. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know how to help people enough to get them into the home that they love.
Yeah.
So it's all well and good. But yeah, I've been doing that for 7 years, and I've worked in finance for 23 years, like half of my life.
Wow.
So I
Yeah.
was I was in banking prior to this. So the least creative stuff that you can think of. So the
Right.
balance in my life
Yeah. If you
is
get
always the
creative in finance, that probably doesn't end up well.
yeah, you end up in a orange jumpsuit somewhere. So it I found that the balance of having a real creative side like music or writing really did balance out that sort of that left brain thinking of finance. So it's served me pretty well. I mean,
Yeah. Does the Apple Pencil play a role with like signing documents and stuff in your work, or?
not as much as you would think. These days, it's more of a click
That's
here,
right. Yeah, I've seen so much that
and
that's the
and
kind of good to go to with signing these days. Yeah.
well, here's what I'll say. When you're, I have an opportunity to work with different investors, and if I'm registering on their loan system for the first time, they'll say sign here as a loan officer. I literally I'll click a link, go to my iPad, sign very nicely with a real Eric Bauer's signature,
Yeah.
because otherwise if I do it on a phone or a Mac, it just looks like I had 3 whiskeys or something. I don't know. So
Yeah.
so I do it on the iPad, so it looks like me, and then that's permanently resolved in their system as my signature. So if
Hmm.
I do business with them, it's my iPad signature.
Gotcha. Yeah. And going with the Air versus the M1 11-inch iPad Pro, was it a cost thing or just like you? Yeah.
Yeah, I stood back, and I'm not one to nitpick about costs or subscriptions. I mean, if it serves me, it serves me.
Yeah, because the
But I
main
looked at
difference
it,
is what you get the ProMotion
it's
display.
promotion. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you can notice it. when you first come away from ProMotion to the iPad Air.
Yeah.
Like I'll be honest, I love the form factor, and it's cute, it's portable, and then I started scrolling, and for probably the first minute, I go, oh, not like that. It was sort of like not
Yeah.
a letdown, but I was like, did I make a mistake? And then I start, you dive into work, and 10 minutes later, you have zero idea anything changed. You
Right.
just get used to it.
Yeah.
I just picked up my wife. In fact, I jumped to the 15 Plus for an iPhone too.
Yeah.
So from a 13 Pro Max. So I'm coming down in the line, but up in screen size.
Yeah.
My eyes are getting old. And so I picked up my wife's 13 Pro Max, and I was like, oh, that's what it looks like again,
Yeah.
after not using it. But to that end, man, I really hope that they have like a 12.9-inch iPad Air this year.
Yeah.
That would be super cool.
Because you're ready to go back up in size.
Yeah, you know what? It's here's why. I'll put the 15-inch MacBook Air on my lap. That feels a certain way. Then you go back to the iPad Air, and it feels really almost a little congested with my hands.
Yeah.
In the middle of the keyboard. And it's like, you know what? I think I actually would like that. I'm not riding a train anymore. I'm living a different type of life down here. So I think I want that larger screen size. I've got the Plus, the Big Air. I might as well go with the big iPad Air if it comes out.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, the keyboard being more full size with the bigger iPad just makes all the difference.
Yeah. I got mad. I'm gonna spoil a little bit. I got mad at OmniFocus the other day. Like it was OmniFocus's fault, and I was tapping. I go, why doesn't this work, Mister Impatience over here?
Yeah.
And I look down, and I'm tapping the caps lock key instead of tab. So that's a clear indicator. It's like, all right, listen, if you really want to build in some muscle memory, get a keyboard that's kind of similar to the one you're using all day.
Exactly.
So I think the second that comes out, I'm all in.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it sounds like the iPad Pros are getting even more expensive. So
yeah, I just heard that.
Yeah,
I don't know where I heard it, but I just heard it.
Yeah, the OLED screens and all that. So
yeah, I don't do enough pro work. I'll tell you what I love though. For accessories on the iPad Air is like I said, the Magic Keyboard and the pencil. The pencil for me, this screen size still serves me well. I don't know if I could ever imagine writing on a mini with an iPad pencil, just because it would feel weird to me, even though it's an awesome device. But I love the pencil because it's largely why I'm an Apple Notes user still, because you could just pick up, start writing, and not have to think about the structure. It's just a blank sheet of paper digitally.
Yeah.
And that's great. The lowering of the barriers to getting ideas out. It's super important.
Yeah. You'll use that just as you're out and about or in meetings or?
I do use it in meetings. And then I will delete the notes after that often, or I'll email them to myself. And so I'll put them in like a company OneDrive file or something like that. And I use all the high end, I forget what Apple calls it for the encryption.
Yes, the scary one.
Right, the big scary. So I use like I take that stuff very seriously. Having been hacked once and having to stop it all, that was not fun. So I take all the encryption very seriously. But yeah, I write on that iPad for just notes because I love, like, I use like a Baron Fig products to write on, and I love the feel of that stuff. But for digital, like, there's nothing better than Apple Notes and an iPad.
Very nice. I know that company. Are you a fountain pen guy as well?
Yeah, I have 3 Baron Fig Squires.
Yes.
On my 3 different colors, and literally every product you could want, it looks like a store over here.
Yeah.
So because that's something I didn't have to wrestle with much in my life, where I just said, you know what, I'm going to spend money once on nice things that I'm going to enjoy using. Because back in the day, when I was a younger musician, I would buy inexpensive bass guitars, really inexpensive, thinking I can do it. You always end up trading to something that's actually built well. And so I've figured the same throughout technology and paper and pens.
Absolutely.
You want the best. If you can afford it, you want the best.
Absolutely. And so it'll last much longer if you buy quality.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned the 15-inch MacBook Air. Where does that computer? What role does that computer have for you versus the iPad?
Believe it or not, I use it more like a desktop.
Okay. Yep.
I don't have an external monitor. I actually use the iPad side by side with universal control. I think that is like just the best because it gave all of us, multi-device users a second monitor essentially. And so I use that all the time. And the MacBook Air is sitting here on the desk, and it's just my big tank, And then, but if I want to go somewhere, that iPad's coming with me.
Yeah. And as far as the iPad, using it for work, when did that start? Was it when the iPad Pros started to hit the scene, or?
Funny enough, it was the Air. Because I felt a little hamstrung, but that's my fault. I didn't get the Magic Keyboard.
Yeah.
Until the Air came out. So,
okay. So, yeah.
I think I could have gone with a Magic Keyboard with my old iPad Pro and said, "Oh, cool." And but I like this form factor too. This is a great form factor. So I think I just wanted something more portable, and then like it was a cost thing, sort of, with the keyboard, and then that's where it really picked up. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about the apps that I use at this point, but I use like IA Writer everywhere.
And that's not just for writing your book, but just like as a general purpose, notes and just getting stuff out of your brain.
I'll write anything that has a purpose. Like, example, I'll capture ideas in so many different ways. And I guess we can talk about the apps. But like, I'm one to make sure that I can capture everywhere. So I use an app called Tot by Icon Factory. And I've got a shortcut on my watch that will capture to Tot.
Wow,
and
that's cool.
So if I'm at a stoplight, I mean, I'm this nutty with it. If I'm at a stoplight and I go, and I'm daydreaming, for a second while I'm at a stoplight, and I think, whoa, this would be a cool idea for a story. I'll grab it, and it goes into Tot. And when I get back to my iPad, Tot's pretty evident with its widgets that you have something sort of in that dot, that page, that you got text in there. So it's sort of like an inbox for me.
Because with Tot, you get what, nine pages?
Seven dots.
Okay.
I think the Icon Factory may have done that just to represent the days of the week, but at some point it's a design choice. They just said, well, I mean, you could. I have used drafts, and it's a very nice tool, but it's more than I need.
Yeah.
Like, I like minimalism, and so Tot is again that sort of blank page, and it's just my little idea. It's Post-it notes that are designed really well. I mean, that's essentially what I use it for. So I'll capture an idea, and from there I go, oh, I've got something in Tot, and it comes into IA Writer. And mostly I just copy and paste. Once it's in IA Writer, that has its own little smart filter inbox list that I've built. And once it's in there, it's like I'm baking ideas. Like, right now I've got 7 or 8 short story ideas. Again, these are coming out of nowhere because I've grabbed them. I didn't imagine writing my next book to be a short story book after the novel, but here we go. And so there's like 7 or 8 ideas that are baking. Those all started in Tot somewhere.
Wow. And the shortcut, how's that work? Because will it like replace an existing Tot and wipe out data sometimes when you don't mean to?
You know what? So Tot has something built into the watch, and I know this is an iPad show. I want to stay centric to that, but they have something built in. They've got their application built in. You could tap into dot number 1. Then you could hold down the screen to write, and then you could tap the microphone. And to me, that's just a level too much of friction. So what I've done is I built in a shortcut, which I can fortunately view on the watch. And I open up the shortcut and I click add to dot, and I'm off to the races. And I always have it looking at dot number 1 out of 7, never 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's kind of my like writing idea inbox. Anything that's in number 1, it's going to end up in IA Writer.
Okay. And you're just appending to that every time versus wiping.
Yes, I'll append to that, right, to answer your question. Yes, it always it leaves what's in there, it appends to the end.
Okay. For the Amazon Workspace, is that just a service you pay for? Amazon has a server with this virtual Windows PC that you can just remote into, and all your data is kind of there, or what is that exactly?
Yeah, it is exactly that. It's a virtual PC. So if I have a problem with it's like Inception, because if I have a problem with the virtual PC, I've got to restart the virtual PC. Then I've also got to restart Amazon Workspace, which is an app on the iPad. So I have to restart the Workspace, and then there's the third level of like literally, oops, the app is misbehaving. Let me actually force quit that on the iPad.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's Inception.
And do you run any custom, like really ancient Windows apps for your business, or what are the tools you use within that?
You know, I came to my company. I said the one caveat have is I'm using a Mac. I'm doing everything on a Mac,
Mm-hmm.
and because in our business we get sort of calls to come interview all the time, and so you could go into a lot of different places. And my company's very forward thinking. They said, sure, just use Amazon Workspace app, and they put in this virtual PC. But from there, I only use our loan origination system. I don't use Microsoft Word. I do use OneDrive on the iPad and everywhere to tie in both my Mac world, because I'm signed into my company OneDrive on the iPad or the Mac or the iPhone, and uh, and then that populates into the PC world version of that over in Workspace.
Yeah. So if you save something from the PC instantly over on your iPad after that, yeah.
And vice versa. So when customers maybe email me a document that's password encrypted, I'll open it up, and then I'll get it over to the PC world through OneDrive.
Gotcha.
So that's actually pretty helpful. And Teams I use, and look, I would never use these applications if I wasn't in this line of business,
Sure.
because I'm not a giant Microsoft fan. It just
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
feel like Apple to me, right?
No.
So,
That
but
said, their iPad apps are actually pretty solid as
yeah,
far as
I was just gonna say
they're no Google. Google is so much worse than
oh
Microsoft as far
God, yeah,
as their apps.
yeah. Microsoft is actually making a stab at it, and you can tell. But that being said, they're super helpful, because if those got cut off tomorrow, I'd really have to rethink how I did things.
Right.
Like,
Totally.
I mean, I guess I could hang out in Outlook on my email and my iPad. It just would give me a headache, but I'd
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. Even Microsoft will be there on Vision OS Day one.
Yeah.
Which
Oh,
some of
good.
the few that are doing that.
I
Some
can
of the
look
big
at an Excel table B12 spot and move it to B13. Good.
right, exactly. Yeah. Shortcuts. Any other uses for you of that app outside the top shortcut?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to dive into the apps that I'm using. So I'm going to my iPad right now, and what I've got ones that really do some heavy lifting. Um, Cardhop to OmniFocus. Okay, so one thing that Things always did, and I guess I'll give a quick history. I was a Things user back in like 2011,
Okay.
and that was my first time I really grabbed a hold of a quote unquote heavy duty task manager.
Yeah.
And I love the design and all that good stuff that everyone says about it. But then I was in college. I finished college when I was 35. Like, I went into the working
Sure.
world first, went backwards, finished college, got my bachelor's degree. And I remember one night, in fact, I pulled up the receipt prior to this. It was March 9th, 2012. So just about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
For some reason, I was like, I don't know. Things feels like it's forcing me. I like opinionated software, but it really wants me to work a certain way. And so I found OmniFocus, and I totally remember thinking like, man, they've really grabbed onto the purple color with this application. It's everywhere. Like, the design on the website at the time was just super purple. But I picked it up on the Mac first, and I was
Hmm.
like, whoa, this feels weird. This feels different, weird, good. Like, I don't know. It's a little over my head. Honestly, Tim, it took me a year to get a hold of OmniFocus to
It's a
really
complicated
grasp it.
app. There's a lot in there. Yeah.
Yeah. However, once you work that way, every other way feels wrong. Now, that said, again, I never want to be beholden to an app I'm not going to let my business fail if an app goes away. Frankly, I could work on paper, right? Because GTD, Getting Things Done by David Allen, if anyone doesn't know it, that's my backing, brain system that I operate my life with. And OmniFocus was written around that methodology of task management and life management. So all that is to say, I use an app called Cardhop for contact management, And OmniFocus didn't have a great integration with contacts. You could like mail a contact to your OmniFocus private inbox, and then go into the inbox and say, call Tim as the subject, and your card would be attached. That's all well and good, but it also parsed it in ways that looked very, it almost looked binary to me. It was just computer speak. Well, what I've done instead is Cardhop by Flexibits. I love that the company and the products. Cardhop allows you to share the link to the contact.
Oh, nice. That's got to be so handy for OmniFocus, right? Because
It is. So here's what my shortcut looks like. Receive, any share sheet, quick action, receive any input from share sheet or quick action. So that grabs the link. I've got the clipboard, and then I ask for text, what do you want to do? And then I ask for text, what note do you want to add to the to-do? And then I grab the current date, and all of that comes in. So the what do you want to do is the subject of an OmniFocus task. In the notes section of the OmniFocus task that's about to be created, I put dash, and then the current date gets grabbed with a colon, and then provided input is the what do you want to add to the to-do? Like, what note do you want to add? So basically, January 15th, 10:30 a.m., this happened with this customer, like, right? And I'll have selected a note, like I'll have copied a note that I've written in Cardhop. I'll copy that to my clipboard, and I'll add it to that. And then I have a link to contact, which goes and then pastes in the shared link to the Cardhop contact. So it's a couple taps, but it's way easier than copying and pasting and going in and adding. I think it's, I don't know, 3 or 4 taps, but it does save me a lot of time. And as a sales guy, I keep all of my follow-up activity in OmniFocus because it's end-to-end encrypted, and I don't put anything super personal in there, but names, Jim Smith, 123 Main Street. You don't really want that laying around anywhere.
no. And with Cardhop, do you treat that as your basically CMS?
Yes, my CRM. Yep, my
CRM,
content relationship
manager. And does that app? I'm trying to remember. Does it?
Yeah.
It would be super smart if they added some kind of like reminder about people. I know it does that for birthdays, but there's no there's no like reminder system within Cardhop to say follow up with X person in 5 days, is there?
No, there's not.
Yeah.
There's not. I know that would be cool if they had it all built into one, because I've Frankensteined my system together. Like it's a CRM, but it's built from a couple applications, because an all-in-one application is, you just feel very restricted.
Yeah.
So I've decided to lean on shortcuts to do the hard work, and that's a good shortcut. Cardhop to OmniFocus. I have a simple link to a simple shortcut that when I add a new prospect, a new prospective buyer, if a realtor calls me and says, "Oh, Jane Doe wants to be called about getting her first home," and they're like, "Okay." And so I hit this shortcut called New Prospect, and it'll pop up. And I keep these on the home screen on the iPad. It'll pop up and it says, "Who's the prospect?" And I enter Jane Doe. And who referred the prospect? Barbara Doe. And then that goes and launches into Numbers and puts in Jane Doe's name in the very first line as a new lead. And it also enters a task in OmniFocus that says, call Jane Doe, create a note in Cardhop about Jane Doe, text Barbara Doe with the outcome, update the Numbers pipeline. And from Numbers, I've got like what status everything is in. Is it a new prospect? Is it something I need to follow up on after initial conversations? So again, you can hear it's like it's bubblegum and scotch tape, but it really works because it's all based on shortcuts. I don't have Alfred, or no, what's the Automator? I don't have any Apple scripts doing anything on the Mac. I figured I want it everywhere, like on the iPad. So I want shortcuts to do that heavy lifting.
No, that's really cool. And I'd imagine it'd be hard to change task managers with all this set up this way, right?
I'll come clean about what I've been wrestling with lately. So you and I talked, and And I was like, I'm an OmniFocus user. And then the next day I'm like, I think I'm trying out things. And I was like really resolute about it. And so what I came to, so to answer your question, it's not hard to change it, and that's what I
Oh,
like about
because
my
like in the
setup.
shortcut, you basically just switch out apps and
Yeah,
yeah,
you can switch out apps. You go, hey, instead of looking at
as long
OmniFocus,
because
look at
things
things.
has good shortcut support as well.
Exactly,
Yeah,
better than OmniFocus at this point, which OmniFocus is leaning on
like JavaScript, they have
OmniJS.
they have
Yeah,
some like
yeah, yeah.
universal. It's pretty powerful,
I,
but you have to be a bit geeky, I should say. To like,
yeah, you know what's funny? So that therein lied my problem. I talked to a past guest on your show, Tim Stringer,
Mhm.
and I emailed him and I was like, "Hey, can we have a conversation, a session?" And I booked some time with him, and I was like, I don't know where I'm going with my task management. Like everything started to get unwieldy, and this is the problem with having so much power comes great responsibility. So in short, what I thought was I wanted to run for the hills and go, I'm going to simplify everything and I'm going to go back to things. And things is an awesome application. I'm not putting it down. However, if you think this through, if I get 10 leads today and 10 leads tomorrow and 10 the next day, and I defer all of them for 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, at the very least, I'm going to have 30 items show up in my today view and things. And
does things
after
have a
one,
forecast kind of thing that like
yeah, it's
OmniFocus
got an
does? Yeah.
upcoming. Yeah. But I just, after literally one day, I was like, yeah, that's why I always run back to OmniFocus. And I was like, you know what, man, it's time to rethink your whole task management, the
Mm-hmm.
way that you're doing things. It's not the app.
Yeah.
Um, so I have sort of rebuilt from the ground up. I actually exported everything
Mm-hmm.
out of OmniFocus into a text file
Yeah.
back in. And then I do some heavy gatekeeping now. So when a task comes in, I'm like, is this actually due in 3 days or 4 days? And I really urge myself to stop creating false due dates.
Are you using start dates more as the thing?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
use defer dates a lot in OmniFocus.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is this. Let's say I enter 10 tasks and they're, call Joe or call Mary, some variation of all that. But I know that Joe is like super urgent, but we don't have an actual deadline at which I should be calling him back. I'll flag that task. And then I also have daily routines, which if there are 10 different subtasks to a routine, I don't want to see, complete morning routine and 10 subtasks. I don't want to see that as 11 due items in OmniFocus. It's overwhelming. And that's actually what had me run for the hills. I think I got smart enough to figure out, wait a second, OmniFocus is powerful. Use it. So I created a perspective called routines. And all I have to remember is when I put on my watch in the morning is to check routines. And the first thing is, take medication for your eyes. I have dry eyes, so I take medication. If I don't do it, and believe it or not, even after years, sometimes I'll just forget, right? So it's there. Exercise, it's like, oh, you have to look that in the eye and go, all right, get out there, do it. So, but without filling up my due spot. So I've created a perspective called focus. And it's anything that's due today, anything that's flagged and available, and any part of my routines. I have it search for the word routine. I have a morning, an evening, and a bedtime routine. So anything with the word routine gets filtered right into that focus list. And that
And
for
that
me has
list
been
does not
working
show up
amazing.
as like a indicator in your doc with a due number.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. It's the way I have it set up, and we'll move on from OmniFocus, but the way I have it set up is I want it to represent what my day looks like. That's one thing that Things does very well. They operate on a time-based system, so it's like here's today, every today list. So I was like, what if I sort of replicated something like that in OmniFocus? And it's really made me happy because I've worked down from I go inbox forecast. So forecast is literally just due items. Like if you just want to zero in on due and hammer through those, get through those today, then you can feel free to move on. But then I have it go down to focus, that focus list. And then after that, it's like all next available actions sorted by context.
Okay.
So I sort everything by context. Again, going back to
What kind
the
of context
GTD.
do you have? Do you have like I'm out on the road with my just my
I'm
phone or yeah.
extremely vanilla GTD. I'm going to read them too.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like um, so under agendas, I've got 7 different people that I regularly speak to. My wife, a couple of my company owners, my loan processor, my parents-in-law, etc. But then I've got calls, the loan origination system I use, errands, home, iPad, iPhone, MacBook, Safari. Safari's obviously for online work. That can be done on any device. Travel. Well, if I'm not here at home, I'm traveling somewhere. And if it's not an errand, like when I just went to my hometown in Ithaca, New York, we just spent a couple days up there. Well, I put travel, go get bagels at this coffee place. Well, I'm in one place at one time, thus travel equals
Yeah.
Ithaca. Okay. So a waiting for list. So anything that I'm waiting for anybody to respond on. A work context, so that I'm, when I'm at work, I can print something off my printer at my office, which is down the street. Or I also have a writing office where I go to just, like, I love my family, but if I need to just bail and say, bye-bye, I got to go write and you're all bugging me. I do a co-work sort of space, and that's been cool. That's a brand new thing as of like 3 weeks ago. And that's been cool. So those are my tags that represent context.
Okay.
I don't get much more complicated than that.
Yeah. And OmniFocus 4, have you upgraded that, or are you still on 3?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was a beta tester. Ken Case reached out to me over Slack like in May of 21, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what do you think about this? And I was like, holy cow, that doesn't look like OmniFocus anymore. And it was just this really early version. So I've been beta testing it all along. When they had the initial design of OmniFocus 4, I wasn't really sure where they were going with it. And I was like, this looks very complicated. And I bailed and I went back to things. And I was very, to be honest, I was sort of depressed. I was like, all right, I guess that ended my run. And then they switched to what everyone's going to see when they search for OmniFocus 4 today. And they said, oh, that looks like OmniFocus. Like, now we've got the design principles in place, and it's just awesome. Once I figured out, like I said, the recent task management snafu and just sort of overbuilding list was on me and not them, I was like, yeah, I'm never changing from this.
So yeah, you mentioned when you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is look at your watch. The OmniFocus 4 app on the watch is pretty nice. Yeah,
it's powerful. I have not all the perspectives shown on the watch, but my focus list is there. In fact, my routines list, which only grabs the routines, that's where I start the day.
Yeah.
And I just go to it on my watch. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that is OmniFocus and some of my shortcuts for that.
This episode of iPad Pros is sponsored by Glisten. Glisten is a different kind of podcast app that helps immerse you in a language you are learning. Glisten stands for Good Listen. It is the only podcast player app designed specifically for language learners. Listen to compelling foreign language podcasts on your way to language fluency. Glisten helps you learn by utilizing repetitive listening workouts, which are like a trip to the gym for your ears. Glisten just launched on iPad late last year, and I'm so happy the iPad version is here. The Glisten experience on iPad is awesome. Most podcast apps, you really aren't spending too much time in the app, and spending more of your time just listening to the podcast in the background. With Glisten, you are actively listening with the app front and center, with you doing one of the many audio workouts the app has to offer. The iPad offers the app plenty of breathing room to display the transcript of the podcast and do whatever audio workout you have set the time aside to do. The power of the iPad Pro lets the app sing, allowing the podcast episodes to be transcribed and ready to practice against right away. The app does support split screen on the iPad, so if you do want to put up a dictionary next to the app or a scratch pad to take notes, you can very easily do that on iPad. The Glisten podcast directory that is optimized for the language you are learning is also much more friendly to browse on the larger iPad canvas and makes discovering foreign language podcasts that much easier. Glisten also features a super fun high scores tab that encourages you to do an audio exercise every day by showing you your current day streak, how many words you exercised to today, how many word repeats you did today, and includes the total number of hours you've done audio workouts. The key to stepping beyond introductory language apps is to start listening to native speakers. Glisten immerses you in a foreign language, taking your listening comprehension to the next level. With Glisten, you can learn English, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Dutch, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. Start learning a language today with Glisten. Head on to the App Store to download Glisten for iPhone, Apple Watch, and iPad. It is free to download and get started with, and if you want to get even more from the app, give Glisten Pro a try to unlock the full feature set. Learn more at www.glisten.ist. And look out for Glisten on the Apple Vision Pro coming soon. My thanks to Glisten for sponsoring this episode of iPad Pros.
Fantastical. That was on the list you sent to me. That probably plays pretty nice with Cardhop, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Did you end up using like the calendar invite system they have? Like, what about Fantastical do you love as a business owner?
I laugh because I was a Fantastical user since 2015. And then when the pandemic hit, I actually worked for Flexibits for like 6 months. And I did support for them. And Michael and I are still friendly today, the CEO.
Yeah,
and,
Michael
they
Simmons,
just,
right?
Yeah, Mike Simmons, yeah. And those guys just, they really care about the outcome. They really care about the experience, the user experience. And so many times per day, I'm just entering stuff in Fantastical. I do on the iPad. I'm just, what is it? Command N, and I'm entering a new event, and then hitting /A for that is an administrative calendar item, right? So it's just super smart about the way it finds and parses information. So there's absolutely no equal. But Cardhop and Fantastical, that makes up the people and the time items in my life, and then OmniFocus. That's the triumvirate. I mean, OmniFocus is the driver of the
that's
test.
That's your trio, your workhorse trio kind of.
Yeah. So, but Fantastical, I definitely do. To answer your question, I use the openings feature, and I have this cool little keyboard snippet on the iPad, and it populates everywhere across my Mac and my iPhone. But if a potential customer contacted me, a great example, Saturday, we were out shopping for a bed for my parents-in-law, and they were like, "Can we talk?" And I said, I went into the text message that they had sent me, and I typed FOPMC, and it's like Fantastical Openings Mortgage Conversation is how I think of it in my head. And it spits out this snippet with my website, a link to my openings availability. And I love it because it has changed my business. I spit that out because it's also like, I want to be available, right? But I'm a married man. I have little dogs, the family. I need to live my personal life too. You don't, call a doctor at 7 p.m. and be like, drop what you're doing. Let's talk now. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, make an appointment. And it's very,
you don't have to spend hours upon hours every week scheduling, which I'd imagine that can take a long time.
Yeah. You get people on your schedule very easily. And frankly, it weeds out folks that are just sort of kicking the tires versus those that are actually serious.
Yeah.
So it really does.
That text snippet, is that just in the settings app built in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And to the keyboard text replacement. So I wish that I could write that on the iPad and have it like nicely hit return and parse a new paragraph, but you actually have to write it on the Mac in a text app.
Yeah.
And place it there, and then it populates really nicely formatted to the iPad and the iPhone.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I know text expander is a bit more full featured with that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, like a text, like even a text edit, the text edit on the Mac, I can put it there.
Oh, to actually save it in the settings.
To actually save it into the settings, right? To format it nicely so that it's indented if you want, or a line break. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, if you do that on an iPad directly or a phone directly, it is a run-on sentence. I mean, yes, you have periods in there, but it's a run-on paragraph. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Another app you shared with me was the Focus app, and I had not actually seen this app across all my uses of different devices here, and it looks pretty solid. Can you walk me through how you're using this?
Yeah. So I have never like been diagnosed with ADD or anything like that, but I tend to get pretty distracted. And so focus has sort of saved me from that. What I do is I pull out 3 tasks for the day and I put away OmniFocus for the moment. I grab those 3 tasks, drag them into Focus, the application called Focus by Meaningful Things. And then I just literally focus on those 3. Those are the most important 3. If I did nothing else in the day, those 3 drive revenue. And so what it does is I'll select the task that I've just dragged in there, and then I say start working on it. And then a Pomodoro timer comes up. And so I have mine set to the classic, 25 minutes worth of work, 5-minute break. And then I even have a shortcut that will kick on the focus mode, so I'm not distracted from anything else. Sometimes I forget to do that. I'll just work right out of the focus application. But either way, it's up in the menu bar, and the Mac, I wish they did have a menu bar for the iPad. But what's really cool is on the iPad, the like a large alert will come up and just tell you to stop, chill out, and take a break. And that's pretty good because I'm one of those people that once I get so focused, it's like, don't forget to blink. I get so focused on the screen in front of me. So that application is really simple, and it allows me to just focus on 3. And I have that rule, 3 tasks per day, because you could put 50 things in there, but then now you're all over the place. So I use it just for, I don't know, maybe I guess an hour or 2 a day.
Yeah, to make sure you finish the things you actually really need to focus on that day.
Yeah. They're a good company too. They didn't, like, if you delete a task, they have a trash can, but then there was no way to empty it. And I was like, I don't want to see things that were literally trash. Like, I was like, can I just empty the trash? And they're like, we don't have that built in yet. And they're like, we're considering it. We'll consider it. And then they put it in. And it's like I like when companies listen to users. I mean, FlexiBits has added features that many people have asked for, and I asked for phone numbers in the opening. So I was like, I can have a phone number.
Yeah.
And then it got added, at some point it just got added. So I like when companies really listen to their end users.
Yeah.
Take advice.
Have you experimented with time tracking at all?
I actually used to do it. The last time I did it was when I began as a 1099 with FlexiBits, on a sort of a 90-day basis.
To pay you properly with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
before becoming a full employee. But I don't do that. I probably should, but
yeah, I know some people love it, some not so much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tend to stay pretty focused because I know a lot of people say, like, I'm only in my task list for 10 minutes a day and then I know what I'm doing. I'm constantly in there going, what do I work on next and next? So that keeps me focused.
Yeah. Another app in your list you sent over by Icon Factory as well, Linea, their sketching app. Do you use this professionally or just like as a catharsis of just get it, drawing and sketching?
What's really weird is like this. So the book that I'm working on, the novel, it's called The Mayor of Blackout County. And in my mind, I'm seeing it as a movie, right? I'm just seeing the scenes. And of course, I've never written a novel, so you have to describe what you're looking at, right?
Right.
So I said, how do I actually describe this? In fact, there was a scene that was really important that I needed to lay out. And I said, I need to draw. And I started to do it in Apple Notes. And I was like, it doesn't feel quite right. And then I said, oh yeah, Icon Factory's got Linea. And I picked that up. And it's simple enough for me, but it's complex enough, I think, for someone that wants to go like really deep. I mean, they do their own artwork in it, I think, and those guys are amazing artists. But yeah, I was able to sketch out this scene that was super important. And then I sat there and I looked at the scene on the iPad and wrote it on my Mac. And I'm looking at it and I go, yeah, that's over there, that's over there. So
that's really cool. Yeah, like kind of like storyboarding, how film directors will do that.
Yeah, but like I had to draw. It's a bedroom scene. It's just kids in a bedroom.
Yeah.
But I had to draw. Something scary happens, and I had to draw like what was happening.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I've not heard that as a tool for writing and novel writing, fiction, and all that. Kind of scares me. It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
Where to even start with that? Yeah.
Well, there's this thing, and this is a sidebar, but there's this thing called pantsers and plotters. I don't know if you've ever heard this term, but I
No.
realized I started as a pantser, as in fly by the seat of your pants and start writing. Just write, right? Because I had this skeleton structure in my mind. I was like, I can just do that. I don't need to overplan. That's always my thinking. I don't need to overplan. And then eventually I go, how do I get from there? And what's the B story's got to factor in? And then you go, oh yeah, I got to start plotting this out, which leads me to OmniOutliner. That's when I look at the skeleton of the story, it's there. Um, it might start in MindNode, which I use
Yeah, I was
also.
gonna ask because I for in one book in my life, and MindNode was just such an amazing tool, just brain dump everything, the branching trees based off
Yeah.
initial ideas, and yeah, that was
You know what it
powerful.
is? It's those two, especially now that MindNode's got an outline feature. It those two can be similar, those two applications, but Omni Outliner was an outliner only, and it's got really nice organizational capabilities. You can actually record audio, which I do in it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I so I use both applications. If I'm, let's see, if I'm like in trouble with an idea and I go, I don't know how to do this. I've got to start somewhere. It's probably going in MindNode. And then I just spit out thoughts and then I organize them. And then I go, okay, from here, it's frozen in time as a kind of a 1.0 of the idea. And I'll leave it there and I'll export to Omni Outliner. And then from there, I can really structure, give it some visual elements, and then, of course, export to OmniFocus if it's a project. That's all pretty easy. And it's easy in MindNode too, but I like using the application. I like using different applications. Like you could use a small hammer and a big hammer. It's like the big one's going to be more efficient for certain tasks.
Right.
You know, the
And
small
it
one's
could damage your wall
nimble.
for other tasks.
Right. You're right. The small one's nimble. The big one could truly damage your wall and go, oops. So you have to be careful. But yeah, I use both of those. And actually on the iPad, the MindNote has really gotten all the keyboard shortcuts I think that the Mac has. And you could just fly around that application. They've done a great job. Yeah, I like those guys. Ideas on Canvas. They're just good peeps.
Yeah. Is cellular data important for you on the iPad? Like being out and about, is that you have good coverage with where you're working?
Yeah. I'm in the Tampa Bay area, so we switched to like a T-Mobile when we got down here, and so that's fine for here. So the iPhone is providing the internet to the iPad because I
Okay, so
always
you don't
buy the
have it direct
Wi-Fi
to the
only.
iPad.
Right. So like if I'm at home or at my office or my writing office, I of course have Wi-Fi. But if some days I'll just want to hop on a bike and say peace, I'm out of here, and throw the iPad in a backpack and go, right in a forest. I literally did that not too long ago. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And so that I could make sure that my changes were synced, I was getting decent enough cell reception, and I tethered to the iPad and uploaded it all to the cloud, made sure it was on my iPhone before I left, and took off. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah. Are there any
yeah.
other apps or tools you use for your day job that we haven't covered yet?
For the day job, Mail is the big one. Apple
Yeah,
Mail.
I'm wondering, like, are there emails as like I need to come back to this, and do you send that into OmniFocus somehow?
Yeah. So it's weird with Outlook, which is what our email is based on. If you forward the email to OmniFocus using the inbox forwarding email
Mm-hmm.
address that you get with OmniGroup, it breaks. I think it like Outlook somehow breaks it to where you could then archive that initial email and you're like, okay, cool, it's in OmniFocus. I'm going to tap on the link, and then you tap on it and go back, and it just jumps back to your inbox. And it's not OmniFocus's fault because iCloud and Gmail all work just fine with that. So I think it's an Outlook thing, but I don't often forward emails because for privacy's sake, I mean, again, OmniFocus is end-to-end encrypted, but privacy's sake, I just don't feel good about it. So often I'll take there's attachments. I mean, that's a big one with Apple Mail. I'll just drag those out from the iPad over to OneDrive and put them in the customer file. And then I'll just archive the email.
Yeah, and I
There's
know
no
with
need to.
Siri, in Apple Mail, you can say, remind me of this, and it'll have a link in the Reminders app.
Right.
But I think that's
Right.
the only way you can get that link, and I think it's probably unique to the Reminders app, maybe. I forget.
Yeah, that is true. When Reminders, I guess the most recent version came out maybe in 2019 or so. I tried it and I was like, oh, that's cute, but
Yeah.
but I found that you could do that, or I think you could drag tasks right over.
Right, yeah.
So if I do, that's actually the method I use. Like, no matter what platform I'm on, if I've got an email where I go, gosh, this is way more efficient to just drag the email into OmniFocus, that's exactly what I do. I just drag it. I don't use the forwarding feature much. And then I'll archive the message.
Mm-hmm. Anything else outside of mail?
For work, not really. No, just let me actually see here if there's anything else. Yeah, Pcalc. Yeah, how could I forget that?
Yeah,
I use Pcalc
working in finance.
constantly.
I'd imagine you would be doing calculations
Constantly.
We finally got the
Pcalc
calculator on iPad, I think, this year, didn't we?
Yeah, right. You know, James Thompson that develops Pcalc is like a wizard. So like, I'll just, even if they bring it, they bring it, they brought it everywhere, but I'm just going to keep using that because it's such a
so
cool
much
app.
better.
You can do so much. Yeah. So I like that. And then actually day one, I use every day to journal about my, work successes, for example. So I have a work journal and a personal journal, and then a Bowers Voice journal, which Bowers Voice is my name for the creative company that I have, because I do voiceover work there occasionally as well as writing. So I'll write like wins about the mortgage industry, just because it's a really tough job some days, and so
I'd imagine like the whole housing market's just been out of whack recently. I imagine it's been could be stressful in that regard. It's just like
about half of the people with my position in the U.S. have quit in the past year.
I imagine just the stress levels trying to like,
and the market, it's just like hard. That right now. Yeah, 2024 as we speak. I mean, it's really tough. But those are the apps I use for work. I think where I get more enjoyment out of being geeky with the iPad is the personal side, and we've pretty much talked about like most of the apps. I mean, I'm looking at Overcast. I use that for my podcasts on the iPad, and Triode, also by the Icon Factory. That's the internet radio app.
Yeah, that's one I've always used Broadcast. So I'd not actually heard of Triode. So it's like an alternative to that app, Broadcast.
Yeah, it's very similar, but Icon Factory's got this. I cannot ever put my finger on it, but it's like
their design's always in another level.
Yeah, it's just super cool.
What do you end up listening to in there? Is it internet radio or is it like live podcasts?
No, I listen to internet radio. So I years ago, like I don't know, 25 years ago, I worked in radio, and so I have an affinity for that.
Yeah,
for listening and hearing different broadcasts, but it's really cool to be able to listen to a show from my hometown. I mean, I can't get it any other way, and it's a live acoustic performance show that's still done at Cornell University. I just listened to it last night, actually, and I did it from Triode. So yeah. So I mean, amongst other applications, other stations, I should say.
Yeah.
So
I use that for the book you're writing. You're using AI Writer for the bulk of the actual writing.
I'm using IA Writer, yes.
Okay.
And so what I did, I switched from Ulysses years ago to IA Writer. I used IA Writer first.
And I know Scrivener's kind of popular for novel writers because you can keep track of like characters and stuff with that.
Yeah, that's like super, super duper. I started using IA Writer, I think, when it was launched in like, I don't know, 2010 or 9 or something on the iPad. And I used that. And I think at that point it was iPad only. And then it eventually came to the Mac and iPhone. But they, again, opinionated design. All you get is a blinking aqua cursor staring at you. If you go full screen in the iPad, it's just like, right. You know? And I like that. Because, again, sort of minimalist. I like that it's just you and your words. Alternatives like Ulysses and Scrivener have a really nice library format. But what I like about IA Writer is your data is portable. So it's all in the Finder or Files app. It's all in Markdown. So, God forbid they shut down, you could take this somewhere else. And what's cool is you don't have to think about your writing first in IA Writer. You could just fire off words. Let's say it's a page and you go, I don't know where this goes. And then later you could add that as I forget what the code block, not a code block. I forget how they tie it in, but you can hit a certain command and literally start typing the first few letters of what that text document that you wrote previously is called, and get it imported into another document. So you can kind of glue them together. It doesn't matter which order you write things in. You could have some master document later that you could put the structure in by adding different. I keep calling them code blocks, but they're not. They're writing blocks or something. Now I've got my writer's block.
do you expect to be able to do the final output of this book on the iPad? I don't know if is Pages, like, I know they have that EPUB export within that, or
again, that's what I love about the iPad. If for some reason I didn't have a MacBook, like, I would write all the text in IA Writer, have the story as it should be, and then import it into Pages and say, okay, now I'm going to get it to look like it should. And then I'm going to ship it off to iBooks, So that's an easy way to do it, I think.
Yeah, because even with the Pages, you can direct upload the iBooks back in there.
I need to experiment with it because I haven't written a book in 6 years plus. So, like, I don't actually know how that works, but honestly, I didn't know a thing about iBooks Author, and I still got my book out there.
Yeah, I miss iBooks Author. Like, I did my one book in iBooks Author, and it had all these fancy, like, widget stuff within there, and iBook and Pages has some of that, but it's not as powerful with that stuff, and it's just sad that they kind of abandoned the more powerful stuff.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I get what Apple's doing. I mean,
it's more universal and all that.
Yeah. More universal, right? But yeah, I'll write the whole thing here, and then save all any screenshot. Well, not that I need to do a lot for a novel, but I would save those in Photos on the iPad, and then import them into Pages.
Do you anticipate hiring someone to do the book cover art, or is that something you'll tackle yourself?
I will tackle it myself only because my wife, aside from being an educator, does really excellent photography on the side. And she took a picture of the place, a place that's that the book is centered around. And I kind of doctored it up in Canva. I might give it to somebody to say, okay, now make it look like a real book cover. But the basic element, I would say it's 70% the cover. I look at it still after 3-4 years after taking these photos, and I was like, yeah, this is what it should look like.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I know that for me was like, I'm just need to hire somebody because I can't make this look.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm like creative with audio, but not video, not pictures. So.
The visuals,
yeah, the visuals. But yeah.
And then you mentioned earlier you record audio, and you did this in OmniOutliner. In your notes to me, you also mentioned voice memo. You're like recording like what people are saying in the book, kind of like, or how's that work for you?
So behind me, I have a vocal studio, and I'm going to read the audio book, and I have honestly yet to decide if I'm going to read it in some version of my own voice or if I'm going to do characters throughout it.
Yeah, because audio books, the performers always fascinate me with like them, changing their voice for each character and remembering what they all sound like, and like.
Right.
That seems challenging to me as someone.
Well, so that's the thing. What you just said. Do I want to add that level of complexity? But what I'm doing is, as I go along, I'm recording a character, that maybe has a heavy New York accent, Long Island accent or something like that. I'm like, okay, they obviously have to sound like this, and so I'll just spit that on into voice memos. I've started toying with the idea of putting that in OmniOutliner because it records, and I can literally. But, you have to imagine a document where you say characters, and you could put all these different names and literally underneath a recording of what they sound like in one document. I think it'll handle it pretty well because the average speaking part, just for me to remember how to form my mouth and my nose or whatever that I'm trying to do with the character's voice, probably takes 15 seconds per character. And if there's 50 characters, I mean, it's not that bad.
Yeah, not bad at all. As far as distribution, is print something you hope to get into at this book?
I really do. I really do because I self-published the last one. That was a great experience. I'm going to do the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think, but a business partner of mine said he's got a publisher, I think in Manhattan, that will help me to get it into physical form. I just
Okay.
don't know. My last book, I have literally only one paper copy exists, and it's sitting 5
Yeah.
feet to my right, just so I can hold it and say, "Hey, I wrote this,"
Yeah, I
and I
wish I
did it
did
on
that
Amazon.
for my book. It's purely digital, and does Apple still make you get an ISBN number for iBooks?
Mm, they don't. They didn't make me,
Okay.
but I gave them one, I believe.
Yeah, I remember. It's like at the time when I published, it was like a requirement. It's like, okay, let me spend the money
Was it
and get
really?
an
Like,
ISBN number, and yeah.
if I have a physical version, it's definitely going to be required.
Right.
So I'll get all that. That's the murky part. That's the part that's got me scared. Like, so the book went on pause once COVID hit. I got sort of bummed out about where the world was. I think as most people did, and my creativity just went to the side. And then it came roaring back, and I said, because I guess I had the first and the third acts, but I didn't really have the second act yet. I mean, I knew what I needed to get to, but the glue, I was like, I don't want this to be filler. And it was that thing where I was sort of forcing filler, and I took a break and I stepped back. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, okay, that's what needs to happen. And I'm in the middle of that right now. So I'm in the second act. I'm pretty deep into it. The third act I could write in a week. But all that being said, the part of me that was the procrastinator was the actual getting the book out to the public. Like, should I do a new site? Like, should I just have it, be a site that you can land on Bauer's Voice, which is what it currently is now. It's under my book section. You'll see a little snippet about a teaser about it. And so I can definitely do the whole publication, but that part stresses me out. But I'll get through it.
Yeah. Do, do you have a synopsis of the book at this point?
Yeah, so it's a story about a musician who's battling alcoholism as well as some unexpected family dynamics.
Okay. That sounds
It's
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it, but I can't say
No.
too much because it'll give it
Yeah,
away.
no, it's fun. Yeah.
But
And then do you have
I
like
would be excited
a length
to
in
see.
mind, like as far as like?
Yeah, yeah, it's like 300 pages.
Okay, so
ish.
decent length.
Yeah,
Book, yeah.
I've got like 160 written.
Okay,
So.
that's awesome. Yeah, and then Bauer's Voice is at least one place you'll be able to kind of follow your
Yeah,
progress.
bowersvoice.com. I'll always link to the book from that. And that's where I do any blog writing. I've written about Fantastical and OmniFocus there. It's all a little, my nerdy corner of the internet.
Yeah. And anything we haven't covered yet that you want to before we wrap it up?
The only other thing, because I'm such a completionist, I've got the other two OmniFocus product or OmniGroup products.
Yeah.
I've got OmniGraffle and Plan.
Do you end up using like I want to find a reason to use all of their apps because they're so great, but I struggle with some of them to like, how do I use this?
I literally would have said the same thing to you 2 months ago, but
yeah.
I went on this vacation in December and I said, all right, I'm going to shut the world off. I'm going to learn OmniPlan. I'm going to learn this thing because Graffle, you know what it does. I actually, if you see the logo for Bauer's Voice, I did that in OmniGraffle.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah,
it's its only job. It's like diagramming. I could do a quick logo, like totally cool. I get it. I'm not an artist, but it'll keep me in perpendicular lines. OmniPlan, I sat down, and I was like, well, what's it good at? I'm not managing some, construction of a 40-story tower, but I am managing my life. So what does this look like? And I was like, well, it's all about deliverables and time frames. If I take the cost sensibility out of it, the time frame is really important to any project. And I said, what if I just ran a document for 2024 that was the big project and said, okay, I'm going to break down my large milestone projects into quarters, and I want to see visually where I am in the year. And then it'll show me in a Gantt chart what projects, where I'm supposed to be in these projects. Because OmniFocus is great. You've got all your projects on a list, but to see it visually in that way too, I mean, I don't know. I think I paid $100 to upgrade it to the non-pro version. It's like, if that's all it did, I mean, I'd pay someone $100 to give me a kick in the butt and say, "Hey, get on these projects." So that's that's what Plan does for me, and I've let it be no more than 10 milestones. You figure less than one a month. Some of those are smaller. One of them's published this book. You know, that's huge. So I wanted it to be realistic as well. I didn't want it filled with 40 projects. Yeah. So I use all four.
It'd be interesting if you could create a genericized version of that, because I think a lot of people would be interested in using Plan for that.
Yeah. I could probably put something together if you needed a copy of it or something.
Yeah,
I could
that'd be awesome.
Together.
Yeah.
But that's it. I think we covered pretty much everything as I look at the applications that are here. Everything. Oh, I want to give a shout out to two quick applications that I use all the time on the iPad. I don't love Twitter. I'll never call it the other name.
Sure. Yes.
And so I bounced over to Mastodon in November of 22.
Mm-hmm.
And I, by the way, I remember the day that Twitterific was killed. It was so sad. It was like the worst. But anyway, I bounced over to Mastodon and I picked up Ivory, which I'm enjoying. That's a very nice experience. So Ivory for Mastodon. And then Mercury Weather. I didn't see it coming, but Malin from the Triple Glaze Studios, I think is the name of the company that makes Mercury, was on another podcast with Ken Case, and I happened to be listening to that. And I was
Mac Power users,
Mercury?
I believe.
Yeah. So that's right. So I went and checked it out, and I was like, whoa, this is a really nice design. I'm a sucker for design. And here in Florida, the precipitation in the Apple Weather app, it's not super accurate.
No, okay.
Because Florida's real finicky. Mercury's very accurate. And I don't know where it's getting its data. I didn't really look into it too much, but I mean, I got a deal on the first year subscription. I said, well, this is my weather app. And I've got it on the watch and the iPad and the phone and the Mac. So it's everywhere now. But I just wanted to give this shout out to them. But yeah, that's my stack.
Excellent. Yeah. And where can people follow you on Mastodon?
I am at EA Bowers, BOWERS.
At Mastodon.
TechHub.social.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll be linked to in the notes for this.
Yeah,
episode.
Thank you. The two @ symbols still, you can see it's like a stumbling block for me. I haven't said that too much.
No, yeah, it makes it a little bit more complicated to find.
EA Bowers at TechHub.social.
Cool.
That's the best place. And then BowersVoice.com. You can always find me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been fascinating learning about how you work. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim, for having me. I really appreciate it. You got a great show. I love how in depth you go. I got to say that because it's like a longer form interview, and just leads to some really good questions and some apps that you've never heard of, maybe, and you dive into. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's my discussion with Eric. My thanks to Eric for his time recording this episode, and my thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. My thanks again to Glisten for sponsoring this episode. Download Glisten for iPad, iPhone, and Apple Watch now from the App Store, and coming soon to Apple Vision Pro. Learn more at www.glisten.ist. As a reminder, you can also support the podcast and get early access to both iPad Pros and Vision Pros over at patreon.com/iPadPros or by subscribing to Apple Podcasts. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.